T-Mac was on.
So, then let's welcome the Vite team. Evan, you and the rest, you are going to help me?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Whatever works best.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to enter here too.
Feel free to introduce them when they're coming around.
Okay, I need to look.
Oh.
I think there. Wow.
Here we are.
Is my mic? Oh, it's on
Yes,
now.
it's on.
Playing games earlier, I heard on the live stream. Oh my gosh. What an amazing amount of talent on this stage. And I'm not talking about me and you.
Yeah, I know.
Where in the world have you seen so much talent on the one stage? Absolutely incredible. Give it up one more time.
Maybe should we do some small introduction round?
Yeah, because do you know all their names? I just know their avatars.
Well, I know a few for sure. Maybe that guy there?
Yeah, I've seen him before.
I mean, Anthony. No, yeah, maybe let's just do it clockwise. Yeah. And yeah, feel free to share the mics. They should work.
Is it working?
It's working.
So I'm Arnaud. I live in Paris. I've been working with React for 4 years, and I try to improve React support in Vite.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Safi Red. I live in Japan. I worked on stabilizing the Vite. For example, fixing some regressions and quickly. Yeah. Yes.
Does it work? Yeah, that's work. My name is Vladimir. I am a Vue.js developer, but I'm here because I'm a core team member of Vitest, and I maintain this package.
I'm Dominic G, and as you see this logo, I'm making Vite plugin Svelte, and I also make Vite ecosystem CI, where Matthias also had some lovely words earlier. So I live in Germany, and I'm a freelancer by day, but by night I do open source, and it's great.
Hello. I'm Evan.
That's it. If you don't know me by now.
Okay, my name is Destiny Fu, and I'm working on the Nux team. So I'm trying to be the bridge between Nux and Vite. Yeah, that's all.
Hello, I'm Christopher Quadfleek, better known as Shinigami, maybe. And I'm the core maintainer of Faker.js, and I joined the Vite Core Team like 2020, I think. And I'm using Vite and Vitest in all my projects and so on. And also I'm a heavy user of Elk and so on. And I do QR like there and so on. Yeah, that's me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hao Chunjiang. I live in China, and you might have known me by my GitHub username, SodaT. I work for Vue.js full-time and contribute to Vite also. I have been maintaining Vue CLI for the past few years, and now I'm working on bridging Vue and Vite. That's it.
Hello, I'm Bjorn. I'm from Malaysia, and you might know me as Bluey on GitHub. I am currently the core team of Vite and Svelte, and also a core residency of Astro.
I'm just here to talk. You know who I am. So we had some questions up in the Discord server view. If you want to ask these talented people any questions, you still have time to post some questions there. But first of all, before we take questions, is there anything that you would like to share? Any of you that are doing anything that you want to say, hey, I'm working on this, it's really cool, or you want to share with the audience? Anyone want to share? Yeah? Go ahead.
It's my first time in the front of more than 30 people on a stage.
That's good to know. Anyone else want to share anything that you're working on that it's cool? I mean, everything's cool that you're working on, but, you know, they're all shy now.
Maybe we'll talk about some more projects, but feel free, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we're making this small little thing called Vite.
All right.
No, that Anthony showed quite a bit what he was working on.
Absolutely.
That's very true. But Antti never stops working. He's like sleeps typing. Okay.
Can we start?
Yeah.
All right. Then let's get on with the first question that was asked, and it is, what is the biggest achievement that you think Vite has achieved?
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I think it's amazing because last time I was in Amsterdam, Vite didn't even exist. And today it has over, what, like 2 million? 3 million, oh, already. That's per week, right? Yes. $3 million per week. And it's all still growing fast, and we have a lot of contributors. And I think more importantly, it has developed into its own ecosystem. It's no longer just a subsidiary project under Vue, but it's now a piece of infrastructure level project that's shared across a lot of different frameworks. We're seeing a lot of meta frameworks built on top of it. So I think, yeah, I think the biggest achievement is we started with this simple idea and made it into something that can benefit more people than it was originally intended to. I think that's what makes me happy, because ultimately I created Vite with the original intention to make the lives of Vue devs a bit easier. Then I realized, okay, this can actually also make maybe a React dev's life easier. So in a way, it maybe also helps Svelte or Astral or anything that depends on top of it. You know, if from a like for-profit company's perspective, they'd be like, why do we want to help our competitors, right? But from my perspective, it's not really about competing. It's really about if you have a good idea, why don't you make it benefit more people, right? So I think it's a good example of how we can leverage the power of open source and just make everyone benefit. So.
Anyone wants to add something?
When Vite started, I was working in a company and working with Webpack 4 and Vue 2. And then always when I needed to spin up the dev server and so on, it took like 1 to 2 minutes. So always I get to go coffee. And then Vite came out, and I'm a heavy TypeScript enthusiast, so I was not sure in the first place if Vite is the right tool, because it's not type checking and so on. But then there was vue.js, and that is checking types before the dev server is spinning up. Oh no, the build takes place. So yeah, I learned that TypeScript is just only important for when you ship to production. So when you're just developing, it's okay to have some errors. And then it was blazingly fast. And I couldn't get any more coffee because of that. And then the plugin ecosystem was also very nice. There started to pop up some plugins like Vite Sleep that helps to spin up the dev server not so fast, so you can get a coffee. Yeah, that was my story and first touch with getting into Vite. And what I also love about Vite is that it's framework agnostic. So it's not only Vue CLI replacement, but it's also used for Svelte, Astro, and React, and everything else. And I learned so much, folks, around the open source ecosystem via Vite. Yeah, that's nice.
I'd like to add that Vite has an amazing team of different skills and people. Like, we are very diverse. Like, the frameworks that build on Vite are very, very different. Like Quick and SvelteKit have some things in common, but others, they are vastly different. Nuxt has very different approach, but we all work together to make it happen, and it just works. Like, this benefits everyone, and we just understand and do it, and this is great about open source. And I really hope more projects follow this approach. It's working great. It gives everyone an amazing productivity boost. So everyone can contribute. Like, I'm more than 40 years old, and for the first 20 years of my life, of my professional career, I didn't contribute to open source. Now I'm sitting here with very smart people and sounding smart, but like, I'm one of you guys, really.
He's like, damn, who put me on this stage? Okay, do you want to, anyone else? You ready for the next question? I like this next question. Is Vite going to support import maps and module federation? First party, not community plugins.
So I'll speak about import maps. So that's something actually been on my mind for quite a bit of time. So it should be relatively straightforward as to just add native import map compatibility. In fact, I consider it a bug to not work with native import maps at this moment. So that's an obvious thing that we need to fix. And so module federation is a much bigger topic. And the short answer is no. In the short term, probably there won't be first-party module federation support because the whole construct itself is very deeply tied into the Webpack model. And at least for this stage, if there is a userland plugin that is able to work, we would prefer to keep it that way. We may consider looking into it in the future, but in a way, we don't. I think this ties into our the position of Vite as a project versus Webpack, right? People always kind of think, oh, Vite is here to kill Webpack. That's not the case, right? We do compete in a certain, there's a lot of overlap, and in a way they do compete, but it's not Vite's goal to completely replicate everything Webpack has to offer. Right, Vite, if we can, say, support Vite's current user base really well and cover maybe 90% of use cases, and there are 10% cases where module federation is your deal breaker, then it's fine to go with Webpack. And there are interesting alternatives to Webpack that's also coming up. So in a way, like we won't say chase module federation because Webpack supports it, we need to have it too. We tend to consider how does it fit with how Vite works, and what is the need from Vite users, and how does that fit with our, say, our resources? Is it worth it to say, if we have to introduce major architectural changes in order to accommodate module federation as a first-party feature, maybe that's not worth it in the short term. So it all kind of ties into the actual user demands and the amount of alternatives out there, right? Because Webpack is not dead. If you really, really need module federation, you can still use it. So
it's a great answer.
I think something that is important regarding that is that, at least personally, I will not like Vite to become the next Webpack in the sense of having 98% of like everyone using it. It's great to have competition and alternatives to also learn from them. And also, it wasn't that beneficial for the ecosystem that packages were developed directly for Webpack instead of for like Node. So at the beginning of the life of Vite, we suffer a lot with bug reports that say, like, my package didn't work. And it didn't work because it was broken. Jorn did a great talk about that, and the ecosystem have improved a lot in these past 2 years. But I think that it will be great to go to a future where we have a lot of tools to choose from.
Good.
All right, going for next one.
Yeah, the next one's a bit weird.
It's a bit cheeky actually.
Yeah.
Why don't you rebuild it using Rust?
yeah, that's a good question, right? So there are a lot of different ways to think about this. The first is, when you compare JavaScript and Rust, obviously you write it in Rust because you want performance. The question is, first of all, how much logic of your whole development model actually depends on computation-intensive stuff? And then there also ties into user-land plugins. I think the more critical question is, how do you interface with user-land plugins when you use Rust? So for example, a lot of you probably know there is a pure Rust-based Webpack alternative coming up that's called RSPack. And I've actually checked it out, talked with their maintainers a little bit, and the solution, so I asked them, how do you support pure JS plugins? And the answer is, in order to get the best performance, they actually have to replicate a lot of these Webpack plugins in Rust itself and then compile it with the main binary itself, right? So that's not a very ergonomic thing for the user, because now the implementation of the plugin is completely in control of the bundler maintainers, and you don't get to actually hack into it, look at how it works. And then there's also the problem of, when you do have to use a JS plugin, there is the message passing cost between, so you have to interface between Rust and JavaScript. There is always this cost of passing data around. And then if, say, you have a big application, every piece of your code actually has to go through still has to go through a JS plugin, then that JS plugin becomes your new bottleneck, which is not really solvable by Rust itself. So there is a challenge of, when you think about this, the reason ESBuild is extremely fast is because it supports a limited set of features so that it can stay in native land as much as possible. It does support JS plugins, but again, when you use JS plugins with ESBuild, you will notice that your JS plugin becomes the bottleneck. It just slows the whole thing down. So in the way that we see the usage in Vite today, we have so many plugins, and a lot of the frameworks that's based on Vite, for example, Vue or Svelte or even React, right? A lot of the compilation still happens in JS land. So, and then there's a lot of the module resolution, the way we load modules in the browser, we are already leveraging native ES modules, right? So the actual JS logic in Vite itself, a lot of them is orchestrating the plugin runtime and then doing some module resolution. So there are areas where you can improve by rewriting some of them in Rust, but it's not going to, say, giving you this like 100 times or like 700 times faster kind of experience that you would expect. Yeah, so it's so again, like I agree there will be parts of Vite that may benefit from rewriting Rust, but the benefit may not be as big as you expect. So it again becomes an engineering problem because you need to think about, is it worth it to invest all the time to rewrite these parts in Rust, but maybe with very marginal benefits? Or do we keep it in JS with the added benefits of you can iterate faster, makes it the contribution barrier lower because there are more people who are able to understand your code and contribute. It also allows us to move faster as a team because you know, having to mix two different languages in Rust is, you know, noticeably a bit more higher cost to from a maintenance perspective. It's also harder to find contributors or maintainers who are able to help us in the future. So these are all things we need to consider. So it's not a simple problem of, oh, because Rust is faster, we should rewrite everything in Rust. It's there are really realistic concerns for Vite as a project to think about that.
There's a, oh yeah, go ahead.
Just speak into it, should be fine.
It's okay. Oh, okay.
It's great.
So yes, like I just want to adding a little bit of my opinions is that I think a great thing that Vite provide to me is that it introduced the idea of on-demand, and that means that it doesn't necessarily means that you will need a new language to make your app faster. Is that maybe sometimes you need to think another way. Is that you can do on-demand compilation, which will be much faster, even though like a full compilations in a very fast language. So I think that also like introduce a lot of new ideas or inspirations to our community to build the tools around Vite. So yeah, I think it really means that when the bottleneck is, and we can find some solution to improve that bottleneck, but it not necessarily means that we need to rewrite all the code base to some other language in order to get the performance.
Yeah. I also want to add, like, so at this very moment, I think, say, rewriting Vite in Rust is not going to be a, say, good trade-off, but that doesn't mean this trade-off won't change in the future, right? Because we're always evaluating, like, what is a good time to introduce changes, and when would this proposal make sense maybe in the future? Because we know, like, during development, Vite is already pretty fast enough for a vast majority of cases. There are obviously areas we still intend to improve. For example, when you have a lot of modules on the first page load, that's one area we want to improve. And then there's the production build area where, say, because like previously we were thinking, oh, if there is a Rust-based rollup, then things could, maybe the production builds could be faster, right? So I think the key idea here is every decision that we're making right now is based on the resources available and the whole, like, because the ecosystem moves fast, a lot of things can change. So we're always willing to evaluate a decision based on the situation right now. So thinking that Rust may not make sense for us now doesn't mean it will never make sense in the future. So from that perspective, Vite is a very, like, we are always looking at it, as long as we can preserve the same DX and improve it, we're always willing to consider what internal parts we can swap out or change to use a new implementation. But every decision has to be based on whether it's a worthwhile trade-off.
Yeah. I want to add that, like, we are talking about an exception case right now, like this many modules on the first page is like 0.001% of production applications. Like, there are billions of pages and applications out there, and most of you will never run into this kind of performance issue where it would be worthwhile right now to invest in this. So we can still do this later and work on even more DX improvements meanwhile. Like, look at the tools Anthony showed today. And this is just the start. We have more ideas in that area, and you probably want us spending our time there and not like chasing Rust right now. So you shouldn't probably have 10,000 modules on your first page anyways.
Code split.
Okay, that was, yeah. That was a nice short answer. Good job. So I'm going to throw in a couple of questions mixed together here because I quite like them. How are you organized inside the Vite team? How do you manage to collaborate with such different time zones? Are there any times where you have to have a call to each other, discuss how to implement stuff, or is it all async via text?
I can get that one. So we work async, like in many open source projects. So time zones actually help because you can get different people to answer when the issue appears. And we collaborate a lot and like triaging and then reviewing PRs and trying to get as much PR to a situation where we know all the trade-off and we can make a decision. And we have regular meeting with all the people that you see here. And we have a board that is public. You can check it out. And then we have priorities, and we start by like the P5, P4, P3, and when we run out of time, then we evaluate in the next one. But in these meetings are like really productive because almost, again, all the trade-offs are already on the table, and we can make a high-level decision and have a consensus there.
Is this the first time some of you have met each other in person? Yeah?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, right? Like we all work together, but we've only just met. Story of people's lives nowadays.
Well, maybe then let's just ask that question because it fits so well. How do you enjoy having so many Vite members attend a conference in person so far?
It's great.
Good answer.
Thanks a lot to the organizers, again, that it's amazing that they managed to get us all in the same room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to jump to a Vitest question.
Yeah, please, please. There are lots of, actually.
Any idea when will Vitest be production ready?
Well,
No pressure, no pressure.
no comment. Oh, we don't know. It's maybe you've noticed a pattern with Anthony's packages. They don't usually release a V1 version. Maybe all at once. Right now, there are no real plans no real timeline to release it. But I don't know. It will be ready when it's ready. I guess. The answer. I really like making breaking changes. So if we release a 0.1 version, then in 2 months we'll have version 32, 33. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think the first thing is that I think we can consider Vitest being production ready, but it's just not starting the version as 1.0. And I think current phase is that for me, I would like to have the changes being the features or the changes like being delivered faster. So that means starting with 0 point something is that means that when the minor version changes, it means that we may contain some breaking change, even though the breaking change might not be affecting the, like 99% of you, but we still be careful. But also like this can keep us to iterate faster, to try different ideas. And it just means that when you see a minor bump, you just be careful to read the notes to see if that breaks something you use, but like most of the time it doesn't. And I think at some points, maybe for the marketing process, we should probably go with 1.0, and then you will probably see like 2.0 next week. Okay, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, think about Jest is already on 26 or something, right? So
29.
Even think of Vitest as like if you go, think of Vitest as like 0.34 or something.
27, something around.
So yeah, just think of it as same Jest version number. it's the same idea.
I can say Faker.js and Prettier Plug and Pack and some other tools I'm maintaining are completely written in Vitest, and also Cypress some stuff, sorry. I may port some stuff to Playwright maybe.
Yes.
But yeah, so Faker.js is completely tested in Vitest, and maybe that yeah, makes you confident to just use it as production ready.
I'll add to that. I just recently migrated the whole Vue 3 core test cases from Jest to Vitest in one afternoon. And I wrote a script myself to do some more mechanical conversions, but 99% of the test logic remains exactly the same. I actually have simpler config, and tests run faster when I disable threads. And yeah, it was a very pleasant experience, and our CI got faster, local feedback got faster, and everything that we saw in Jest has an equivalent. So, so I would say I consider it production ready, more than production ready. So don't really. I think when you are evaluating whether a thing is production ready, it's more about what your use case is. And from the past few versions, take a look whether the features that I care about, is it working correctly? Did it go through abruptive changes? What kind of changes are you actually landing between these versions, right? If, say, over the 4 to 5 versions, really these changes don't really affect me, then to you, that thing is production ready.
You said you have a script for migrating from Jest to Vitest. Would you like to package it?
Well, it's a bit specific, but mostly it's about, say, Jest has a bunch of globals like Jest FN or like Spyon, something like that. So I just wrote a script to convert those to vi.fn and then import it if it doesn't exist. That's it.
There's also a project called Vitest Codemon or something like that right now in development from the community.
And if you just want to try, you can also just alias Jest to Vitest and see if it works. You would be surprised how many times it just works, honestly.
Clever hack, so to say.
Okay, I think we'll go on an interesting question going back in time. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way with Vite?
For Vite, I think the biggest challenge in the beginning was probably getting people on board with the idea of ESM only, because Webpack has the history of supporting a wild amount of just like things that shouldn't work, but it works in Webpack, like mixing ESM and CJS, doing like inline require calls in an ESM file, and even if you package things wrong, Webpack still makes it work. So people's expectation of what considered should work is, I don't want to blame Webpack, but like a lot of users kind of got spoiled by Webpack, thinking like even if some code is not spec compliant, it should still work. So I think the biggest challenge in the early days of Vite is every time we try to sell people on it, people are like, but my code works in Webpack, it doesn't work in Vite, you're not doing it right. So we have to explain, okay, like this is actually not our fault. Like, so it's an interesting process because the time Vite was starting to get a bit of adoption is also this still ongoing transition period from the whole Node.js ecosystem and front-end package ecosystem, moving from this wild west of like AMD, UMD, CJS, ESM, all mixed up together, with finally a push towards moving things more towards standard ES modules, right? So I think in the early days, a lot of people still kind of think of Vite as they want it to be a dropping Webpack replacement when it was never intended to be. So obviously we had to make a bunch of trade-offs, and eventually we kind of catered to a bunch of needs, but like it was a process of like just gauging how much we should, like sort of how many of these workarounds or like edge cases we should cater to balance that between like getting adoption versus staying as close to standard as possible, but like not like, for example, like should we polyfill Node.js built-ins by default, right? That's also a thing a lot of people complain about because Webpack used to do that by default. And yeah, I think the biggest challenge is really just like, because Webpack was so dominant and people use it as a de facto standard as a comparison, and when you don't do something that Webpack does, they consider you are wrong. So we have to kind of overcome that mindset of convincing people, okay, like we don't have to do everything that Webpack does. Vite is Vite, and if you don't like this behavior, you can keep using Webpack. And I think that kind of worked because we still really strictly enforce that you can only use ESM in your own source code. You can, so we don't polyfill Node.js built-ins by default, and that didn't really like hinder its adoption, I think. So so I'm glad we stuck with some of those decisions, and it still worked.
I have one, but Anthony should answer. But another big challenge that we had is that Jest was not working well with Vite. And I think that is a great story to share.
What should I say? Okay. Oh yeah.
No pressure.
All right. Yeah, I think since I think the idea of Vite is so new, is that like doing on demand and doing taking the responsibility of like have to bundle your code from your bundler to your browser, and where browser is actually more efficient. So with that part is that it doesn't work with the existing testing libraries like Jest, and you have to have a different set of pipeline to do the transformations for your code to match with your application code that like served by Vite. So that kind making some like barrier for us to say Vite is production ready and you can use it to build an app. And the only missing part is that you cannot have a good testing for your application. So that's the thing we were discussing about which test runner we should recommend in our documentation. So that was in one like team meeting, and Bata come up with the name like Vitest, and it turns out that it's available on NPM. So that's we grabbed the name and build a package for that cool name. So yeah, and yeah, we're glad that we find a way to solve this and to actually make a tool that we kind of being proud of and really happy using it. Thank you.
Just came into my mind. The coolest thing about Vitest and the Vite ecosystem is, for example, Faker.js is using Vitest and Vitepress for documentation and Vite for bundling also. And so I do not need to use any more Webpack or Jest or anything like that. And Docker Zyros, for example, as documentation. And now I have 3 independent ecosystem structures around my tool. but because everything is more based on Vite, my package dependencies or my package log is split more by half the size. So I have more, or I have less dependencies that I need to manage and I need to download because everything is somehow based on Vite. And yeah.
I want to add one thing is that Vite help us think out of the box. And for me, I used to maintain Vue CLI for several years, so it's hard for me to say goodbye to Vue CLI and let it be in maintenance mode. But I think Vitest helps a lot in the process. I used to try to keep the ecosystem continue to work with even when Vite came out. So I even write a package called Vite.js, trying to make just work with Vite, and it turns out to be very hacky, and it's not a good option. So we end up not recommending it. And then Anthony created the Vitest, and so it's so I now then understood that. Maybe the best option is not to keep using the old tools, and sometimes a new tool, even with some manual effort to migrate your old code bases, is worth it, and it provides a better experience.
So the Vue community seems to produce more framework-agnostic tooling like Vite, Vitest, Volar, Nitro, etc., than other ecosystems. Any thoughts on why?
I don't think that's an intentional decision. Like, in a way, obviously there are, say, I think Jest was probably created internally by Facebook. It's not React specific, but it kind of got adopted widely. I think overall it's just thinking about the level of abstraction. When a lot of projects in the ecosystem arouse from, like, all these open source projects typically arise from the developers' needs to solve their own problems, right? So when you're working with only one framework, it's very easy to come up with a solution that works only for that framework because it solves your problem. But as someone who my main job is not working on a specific application, I almost work at an infrastructure level now. Like that Vue is kind of like the lower level for higher level frameworks like Nux, and Vite is also relatively lower level for meta frameworks built on top of it, right? So I always tend to see the problem from a perspective where essentially, like, when I see a problem, I try to think which layer it is in, and try to think. You always want to provide a solution that's less coupled to. The fewer things it's coupled to, typically it's better, right? It's also from a maintenance perspective. Like even inside Vue Core, there are layers of, like, the reactivity package is the lowest level thing, and then we have runtime core, runtime DOM on top of it, right? So a lot of times this kind of separation helps you to have a cleaner architecture in a way. So I guess that's a habit for me to always think about, like, if I'm building this thing, does it really have to be coupled with Vue, or does it really have to be coupled with whatever thing I'm working with right now? Can it be extracted into something that's reusable? It almost becomes a habit, like, right? The reason Anthony has so many packages is because every time he solves a problem that he has, he's like, this can be made into something reusable, and a new package is born on NPM. I think, I don't know why it's more common in the Vue ecosystem. I think if you look hard enough, there are probably good examples from other ecosystems too. But I think Vite just draws more attention to it because it's probably one of the more prominent examples that people can think of. But I think every framework should like try to do more of that. I think it just benefits more developers in the end.
Alex, I think you had a favorite question.
Oh, I quite have some favorite question, but there are quite some interesting ones. I'll go with these first. Favorite ones for the end. So another question on Vitest actually. Can you give an update on Vitest performance? While migrating multiple projects from Jest to Vitest, we noticed that running tests is slower. The last release improved a bit, but Jest is still faster, according to the question. And thanks a lot for great work, by the way.
The dreaded question. Well, it's fast on my computer. I don't know what they are talking about. But there are several layers to unravel here. There is like two separate processes. When you are writing tests, you either write tests, and you probably should have a watch mode enabled. It's usually enabled by default. And it's super fast when you make changes. You see your test rerun, you make another change, your tests. Sometimes you don't see your test rerun, but they are running because it's too fast. And we are very proud of this workflow. We really like it. And a lot of people for the past 2 days came to me and said thank you for this, for the exact same thing for watch mode. But there is also a tests when run in CI, which are actually running, and this can take a lot of time sometimes. And for the past 2 months, thank you for noticing, there was some improvements. It was, I wouldn't say improvements, they were more of bug fixes. Some funny imports where they shouldn't be. But yeah, we initially thought that bottleneck was worker initialization, but turns out it's really not. It's if you go to Vitest issues, you can reorder them by the most liked ones, and the first one that will come out will be Vitest is 3 times slower than Jest. I'm keeping a close eye on it. And there are some comments and from one specific guy who said that tests are running 3 times slower in Vitest than in Jest, but when he made one change, he aliased one of his node modules package to that was ESM compatible, that had a lot of files that piled up on each other. He aliased it to one file, and tests were the same as with no threads for some reason. So maybe sometimes the problem is not in Vitest. I don't think the architecture that we built is the problem, but we can certainly try to improve this performance. Also, module resolution takes a lot of time. I hope the new TypeScript module resolution bundler, everyone will use this thing, please, should improve and use extensions in the new imports. It will be like 30% faster. But yeah, I think Evan, when presented Vite for the first time, he said that there should be an optimization step for node modules, because if you just import for node module, it will start importing these hundreds of files, which will be slow, and which will be slow because of the network issues. But it also slow. But it will also be slow in Node just because it's 100 files imports. So yeah, maybe we can somehow improve the this part. But I know.
I would like to add the same thing I said earlier, like the runtime performance of Vitest is plenty good enough for most situations. And like if your CI runs in 80 seconds, then in 60 seconds, or even in 40 seconds, that's still bearable. But the great benefit of having like instant feedback of Vitest watch mode, it turned my life around basically. So try it. You won't regret, I promise.
I'm going to keep you on the testing question, but it should be a quick one. Is Vitest leaky between test files? For example, do I need to clear all mocks after all in a describe block?
It depends.
Told you to be short.
You can do that. You cannot do that. I think by default it doesn't clear mocks. There are options in the config to do this, but it tries to give users more control over how they want to do it. But yeah, it depends.
That was quick. Okay. There's another one. We briefly talked about how Vite is not a Webpack drop-in replacement, obviously. But the question is, will there be some kind of migrating guide how to migrate from Webpack to Vite?
I think there are a lot of community guides on there already.
Oh, sorry, from you as the team.
Us.
Yeah, to add that.
Copy paste.
Yeah, we can probably just have a page where just we list all the user land guides, because it's never going to be comprehensive because different people have different Webpack setups. You can have wildly different Webpack configurations. So it's hard for us to give you a one-size-fit-all migrations. I say a create React app migration to Vite will probably be straightforward, but it probably won't work for a Vue CI app, right? So that's why it's hard to give you a one-size-fit-all kind of thing. But I know there was a project called there was a code mod project that can automatically converge a project, but it's targeted towards Vue CLI because it's easier when you are using a strongly convention setup, like a created React app or Vue CLI, because we know what kind of setup you have. But if it's a custom Webpack config, we don't really know what you're using, so it's hard for us to tell you this is what you do, right? So.
I think it was Webpack to Vite. There was one like that, and also the folks from NX now have CLI to do some of that. But it's, as you said, it is not a fit-all. But also, one thing first is that the Vite core team cannot do everything for everyone. Evan always mentioned the resources available. We need the ecosystem to do all the things. Even for our own documentation, we are thinking on, or maybe we shouldn't have the deployment page show how to do this in our thing, but it should be directly in the deployments docs of each of the services. So it is important that the core team does Vite core, and then all the ecosystem work on the rest. And also about the migration, an automatic tool is interesting, but it's also really nice to start maybe fresh with Vite, really learn how it works, because it's not the same. So if you just convert, you're going to miss all that learning period that I think is really important, because in the process, you may end up deleting a lot of things instead of just moving one thing to the other.
Yeah. I want to echo that because I just recently bought a new MacBook, and every time I buy a new MacBook, there is a feature that allows you to transfer your old data from your old MacBook to the new one. Every time I think about that, but I ended up not doing it because I want to set up my new machine from scratch, look at my old setup, and thinking about where I can optimize. And I often end up switching things up using a new solution or dropping some old config that's no longer needed. And in that process, I optimize my setup. And I also have a much more solid understanding of my new setup. I know everything that went into this fresh machine. Instead of maybe I carried over a lot of legacy stuff, I don't even know how it works now, right? So I just want to echo that sentiment of sometimes maybe when you're switching to a new tool, rethinking your whole configuration can actually help you start with a fresher, better foundation for your new project. Yeah.
So yeah, Patak and Ivan also already said, but I can just suggest to take your old project and then spin up a new Vite project with the template options. And then just moving some files over. At the start of Vite, or when I first participated in the core team, there are many questions like, why can't I move my index HTML to the source folder or the whatever folder? And it's just not how Vite works under the hood. And we always taught them you cannot just put your Webpack old legacy project and migrate it just by replacing a Webpack config against the Vite config. So you need to learn some new stuff, and like Ivan already said, by doing so, you also maybe move out some trash and old config that is just legacy stuff, and you don't need it anymore. And yeah.
Also, like, just playing with Vite is absurdly easy. Like, you can just go to vite.new and play in your browser. You don't have to install anything. And if you want to test the templates, you can just use create Vite, like npx create Vite at latest. And I would also like to highlight create Vite extra by Björn. If you don't find the templates fitting your use case, have a look there. There are some that use Deno. There's some like low-level SSR framework starters there. So if you want to make your own, have a look there. It's really cool stuff. Like, I mean, we could basically talk all day about all the awesome packages that are already there in the Vite ecosystem. Let me just say I love you all for building.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John.
Okay, a bit of a technical one here on your decisions. What was wrong with CJS modules? And what are the objective reasons we should all be adopting ESM? As far as I can see, all ESM has done is cause an incompatibility cluster and cause a divide in the module community where there didn't need to be one, don't you think?
What was the last half of the question?
Cause a divide in the module community.
So yeah, if you think about the whole CJS to ESM migration, I agree, like the whole transition period is caused a lot of issues. It's kind of painful. Like even to today, publishing a package is hard, right? I think ultimately the reason that we need one is because CJS was something that Node.js just came up. It almost became a de facto standard, but one of the driving reasons for the syntax design behind ESM, which I initially kind of, you know, when it was first introduced, I was in the boat of like, CJS is great, CJS is fine. Why do we need to introduce another module format? But ESM actually enables a bunch of interesting capabilities where, first of all, the syntax is more restrictive, but it's designed to allow easier static analysis, so you can more easily determine the relationship between modules. It's more deterministic, so which means for build tools and bundlers, it's easier to understand the relationship between modules. Then it's easier to do optimizations, like tree shaking. And in fact, the reason your bundle can be smaller is, like, if you use CJS, like, Clojure compiler can do CJS tree shaking to a certain extent, but it's just because the extremely dynamic nature of CJS allows you to do all kinds of crazy things that can just cause the optimizer to bail out. It's just not as real. So ESM is more like sort of tying your hands up a little bit, but then you end up with a code base that's much more optimizable by tools. And also because ESM is written into the standard, whereas CJS is de facto standard that doesn't. It's an implementation detail to be precise that Node.js happens to choose. So from that perspective, we want to. Another reason is obviously ESM is now a natively implemented feature in browsers because it's a standard. It's now a native part of the JavaScript runtime in everything that's standard compliant. So it would. CJS by definition is Node.js specific, but nowadays even JavaScript runtime is not just Node.js. You have worker environments, you have Deno, you have other environments. But the common theme is all these new runtimes, they all support the same standard ESM modules. They don't necessarily support CJS. Most things that support CJS that's not Node.js only do it for Node.js Compact. So that's not a really good reason to stick to CJS. I think the transition period is painful, but eventually when we all move to ESM, it's going to be good. Like, in a way, the reason Vite strongly sticks to ESM is because we had the ability to start fresh. Like, Webpack had to deal with all this interop stuff, but like the time Vite was coming out, the whole idea was to leverage native ESM. So pulling all CJS interop will inevitably make everything a lot more complex. Again, like slow us down, and also it doesn't improve the status quo because it will just allow people to keep staying in the mixed CJS ESM land. And for me, like personally, one of the reasons we stick strongly with ESM is I want to use Vite as a leverage to help push the ecosystem towards more just everybody just use standard ESM. That's one of the things I kind of have to intentionally push a little bit.
I want to say that CJS is not the culprit, actually. The real problem is the previous tries that we intended to make CJS compatible with ESM, or we intended to move our code to ESM-based. And the mess is caused by that. And the old tools cannot just drop the compatibility layers previously. So there are a lot of issues with Babel transpiled ESM files and Webpack transpiled ESM files that are made into CJS. And it is because ESM is not a mature spec when it comes into the JavaScript spec. If Node.js does not fully support ESM until like Node 12 or 14. And then people just use all the custom fields for ESM entries like module field. And later, the Node.js team decided that exports mapping in package.json is the way to go. And then we have a ton of issues regarding the module field, because sometimes people think it's an ESM file. Sometimes people think it's only for browser builds. And because at that time, browser already supported ESM, but Node.js does not. And there are it is a mess regarding to this issue. And Vite, as a new tool, we have the opportunity to just drop these malformed CJS files. They are not actually CJS because they intended to be consumed as ESM, but they are not actually ESM. It behaves differently. So we use Vite as a leverage to move the community forward, I think. And that's it.
I also like to add that when I started at web development, like CJS and ESM is definitely something everyone would have, and I wonder why is there two specs for JavaScript? Like, should be one, right? But I think the revelation comes to me is when I understand like why are there two. So friend Rixel taught me that actually CJS is not really a spec, like it's a runtime, it runs on runtime, so it's hard to know ahead of time that you're importing a module or something. And ESM, on the other hand, is actually not a runtime, but a spec. So it is syntactical wise that you can analyze and understand what is actually importing. So there's no wrong with that. And the reason bundlers support ESM is because of the ability to analyze it. So compared to dynamic require with CJS, it's hard to optimize. And that's why from that on, I understand okay, ESM enables all this optimization. Maybe it's worth understanding why I should, when to use require, when to use import. And from there on, I think, yeah, the transition, although it's painful, but it is worth it because there's a reason. And I think that's a good reason to learn the nuances with it.
Yeah, I think what Evan said earlier about various runtimes adopting ES modules as their truth, basically, allows us to have these universal applications that you can just deploy anywhere, and this is a future that's worth working forward towards, even if we have this mess right now, and even if Node.js, they are not going to drop CommonJS anytime soon. There's just too many applications that's still needed because they never get updated anymore. The developers left for other projects and they are still running, so they have no time or no reason to just no longer support it. And if you build server-side only Node applications, be my guest, continue developing CommonJS applications, it's fine. But for the web ecosystem as a whole, building things in ECMAScript modules enables this universal compatibility. And if we agree on a common set of server-side APIs, we get the browser spec and the server-side spec, and we can just build applications and deploy them anywhere, and it works. And I want to have that, and it's worth working through this mess. We need your help. When you find packages that don't pass Publint, please tell the authors, but be nice about it. I've built packages that had errors in Publint, and I know a lot more about packages than I ever wanted to. So it is messy. We have to get out of it. It takes all of us to do it. So get started. If you have packages, use Publint, put it into pre-publish, and tell your friends, tell your mom. Do it.
All right, we have 3 more questions because time is running, or even flying, so we're slowly wrapping up. The first of these 3 questions is, and I think everybody can answer if they want to, what is the most amazing package in the Vite ecosystem, for you personally, that the core team didn't build? So the most amazing package that the Vite team did not build.
I think I can answer this. So I think in the ecosystem, there's many interesting ones. For me, I think the interesting one is Vite Electron. So Vite usually is being used in the browser, but Electron is special case where browser and Node runs at the same time. And there's great contributors in the ecosystem. There's not from core that made it work, even though it's in Vite's own nature that it shouldn't have worked. So for me, that is very interesting. I'm very, very interested to see how it goes from there.
Nice.
Yeah, I mentioned it already. This Vite plugin sleep was very funny.
I think one thing worth mentioning is a plugin called Vite Plugin Checker. So one of the things a lot of people just started using Vite, they complain about, why do you only transpile TypeScript that does not do type checking? And the reason we don't do that is because type checking by itself is incompatible with the on-demand transformation pipeline of Vite itself. Because type checking by definition, needs knowledge of the whole module graph, while Vite only processes modules one at a time when they're imported, right? So jamming the whole type checking or like say ES-linked linting into this on-demand model will inevitably slow it down because the two is just incompatible. So our recommendation is always to do static analysis that requires parsing all the files together in a separate process or thread. You can do like manual TSC watch mode, or you can use Vite plugin checker, which can run TSC and ES-link together in a separate process.
Yeah, I like to add a twist. Like everything Vite builds on, from Rollup with its great plugin API to a lot of very small utility packages that if we take them away, Vite would just break completely apart. They are so important for us. So thank you everyone who builds low-level packages that are used in the Vite ecosystem. Also, thank you Prettier and ESLint and all these tools that make code bases cleaner. They are very important, and it's important you support them. When you think the Vite code base is too large and too scary to contribute to, find these small tools. They need our help too. Look at them, help out where you can and want. It's very important.
Speaking of that, we definitely want to mention Vite is built on top of ESBuild and Rollup, right? So these are two extremely important foundations that enables Vite to be what it is. So these two projects deserve a big shout out too, and so their maintainers are also doing an amazing job. Yeah.
Any other packages someone wants to mention? Nothing. Ah.
I have one that is, well, now it's from a Vite Core Team member, but Vite plugin React SWC, at that point you weren't, and that was a community package and was at the right point, at the right place, so that was really, really good. So thank you for that.
All right.
He was going to speak.
Nothing to add.
Then up to you, Debbie.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, we premiered the Vue documentary here. Yesterday, the React documentary. When is the Vite documentary? The community have already given it a name. It's called Vite for Speed.
Well, Honeypot hasn't contacted me about that yet, but
damn, Honeypot.
Maybe they will after they see this.
They should.
Okay, yeah, it would be a very cool documentary. I'd love to see it.
All right, then the last question of today. And once again, I would really like to have everyone to answer after a short period of thoughts. So, in one sentence, describe what Vite is for you.
Could be just money or food or, you know.
And no, the technical definition doesn't count.
Fast.
That's a sentence, yeah.
Germans.
For me, it's ecosystem collaboration. That is one of the main things also for Vite moving forward. All the feedback that we get from all the framework authors and inform how Vite progress.
So for me, Vite is my first opportunity to make open source and to contribute to tools I love to use every day. So yeah, that's it.
For me, it's been something like my child. I don't have, but I'm thinking about it almost every day and every time. So it's, yeah. It's like my child.
Okay, so for me, Vite is this exceptional community of great people, and I happen to have to become a part of it, and it makes my day every day. It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it somehow.
For me, Vite is a very pleasant surprise that outgrew my wildest expectations.
Nice.
And I really appreciate everyone here for making it what it is today. Thank you.
Okay, you already said a good big word. So yeah, for me, I think is innovation. I think like the exist of the Vite is that really opens up a lot of different ideas or like inspirations that we could have to build a tool, and this it's actually giving us a lot of good idea to have like a lot of improvements that we wouldn't imagine before. So yeah, I think that's the word I'm going to pick.
For me, I think Vite means collaboration, and I have to shout out to Matthias. By watching his way of doing the job in Vite, I see the possibility of collaboration between the other community open source maintainers, and it's enormous.
For me, the one word to describe Vite is experience. So it's not a user experience, developer experience. It's experience getting to know how all these people work. Matthias, he's an expert with the ecosystem. With Evan, like he's an expert in an eye for DX, how to manage issues and open source in general. And of course, many more experienced maintainers here that I'll have no idea, no way of interacting with them if I've not been actively in the open source. So the experience is definitely the main point for me.
I think I'll just add to it and say Vite has an absolutely amazing community, and I think that's what makes it so successful. So thanks to the community.
Okay, then I add my 2 cents in here as well. I think Vite is an amazing example of open source that also goes beyond the boundary of frameworks, and it really shows that it doesn't matter if you are into Astro, Svelte, React, Vue, whatsoever, that you can collaborate, and that it's not always about, oh, is this framework better at that? It's more like, as already some people saying, innovation and collaboration.
So I think we have to end the panel, which is very sad because it's been so much fun here. I don't think it's going to be possible to have us all here ever again. We might, who knows, like the same amount of people, the same, like who knows. But it's incredible to have this panel here. So like take this moment, take a photo, because you know you might not get this opportunity again. Some people are here tomorrow, so if you're around tomorrow, you'll be able to ask some questions as well in breaks and stuff like that. And we're all photos, love it. And I just want to say personally, thank you to you all for sitting here so long, for asking the questions, for paying attention, and for being part of this amazing community. Thanks to all our team who are absolutely incredible. Like I said at the start, the intense amount of expertise on this stage is insane. You'll never find it anywhere. So big round of applause once again. Thank you, everyone.